So you brought me into the lab. One of the things you talked about was sending one of the squirrels into outer space, or many of them, I should say, which I was like, okay, this is getting really cool.
The idea is you send these hibernating animals up to space to see if they can avoid some of the consequences of space. So radiation is very harmful. Also, astronauts are known to sort of lose bone density and muscle mass rather quickly in zero gravity conditions. And they seem to avoid all of that in their hibernation cycle when they're not eating or drinking or sort of behaving as a normal mammal would. So we want to see if that also applies in zero gravity conditions.
Welcome back to the Startup Wisconsin podcast, a show where you can learn about Wisconsin's growing tech scene through the stories of startups, founders, investors, and the talented people making it all happen. Today, I'm talking with Ben Sajdak, a director at Fauna Bio, who's currently working out of a lab at UW-Oshkosh. Now, Fauna Bio isn't a Wisconsin-based company. They're based in the Bay Area, but they've set up a lab here because of something pretty unique, a breeding colony of hibernating ground squirrels. I learned some wild facts in this conversation. These squirrels go into hibernation for 6 months, dropping their heart rate from 300 beats per minute to just 3, and somehow avoid all of the health problems that would commonly kill you or me. Fauna Bio studies these adaptations, along with things like why elephants rarely get cancer, and uses machine learning tools to compare genetic data across hundreds of mammals to develop new human therapeutics. We talk about the fascinating science behind it all, including a NASA project to send hibernating ground squirrels into space. But we also dig into what it's like being part of a biotech startup in Wisconsin, the talent and resources available here that most people don't know about, and Ben's efforts to connect the Fox Valley science community. So let's jump into my conversation with Ben Sajdak from Fauna Bio.
We leverage millions of years of evolution to study disease adaptations and develop those into new human therapeutics.
Wow. What does that really mean? Like, to a normal person, how does that impact like my life someday?
Yeah, so we all know people who have been affected by disease, but we study critters who can avoid those diseases. And we share a lot of the same genes with those animals. They're not so different from you and I.
Yeah.
So we can really study those genes, develop hypotheses on how they avoid certain diseases, and then develop and test new therapeutics based on certain disease conditions.
Interesting. I was listening to an interview with the CEO of Fauna Bio, and she talked about her background in veterinary science and cancer research, and how she was kind of like, oh, why? Like, there's cancer in animals too, but we've been so focused on just cancer in humans. Maybe speak to that a little bit, like why it's really important for us to be going into these other species and how it can be helpful for, I guess, things that we're dealing with as a human race.
Yeah, I think about this in two different ways. There's models of disease. So there's animals that suffer the same types of diseases in the same way that we do. Dogs getting cancer is one example of that. But then there are animals that completely avoid those diseases. Naked mole rats and elephants come to mind, certain whales. They never get cancer, maybe once in a while, but they're really known for avoiding cancer. And so there's two different approaches there. You can sort of develop a treatment in an animal model of human disease, or learn from its natural adaptations to avoid that disease. And so we've kind of focused on the latter approach, where we're studying the adaptations and disease avoidance within mammals that can do that.
Yeah. I want to kind of go back to like how you got involved with Fauna Bio. And if you feel like you want to talk about kind of like your career arc and then how you got to that point, I'm curious, like, what was the connection between you being in Wisconsin and your background and expertise, and then working with Fauna Bio? Yeah,
and I'll try to keep it short. So like I didn't know I wanted to be in science. Was working like construction in the area, but then I started like watching Planet Earth and TED Talks about science, and I kind of wanted to either do science or write about science. I ended up going to UW-Oshkosh and getting a biology degree here, and then going on for grad school to dig a little deeper. But I started working with hibernating species, animals that have adaptations here at UW-Oshkosh. And I've just been studying that at various stages throughout my training. And then we were able to, I sort of learned about Fauna Bio being developed when I was in a postdoc, and that's exactly what I wanted to do with whatever career path I was going to choose, was apply these adaptations to new human therapeutics. And so that presented an opportunity to support the ground squirrel research happening on campus, as well as grow our tools and data sets within Fauna Bio.
Yeah, very cool. So what I learned today was that the work that you're doing with Fauna Bio is tied to a breeding colony specific to Oshkosh, this area, or within Wisconsin. Why is that happening? Why is that significant? Maybe elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, so the why is largely accredited to curiosity of Dr. Dana Merriman, who's been running and managing a ground squirrel colony at UW-Oshkosh for almost 20 years now. And the goal was based in ophthalmology and retina research specifically. Traditional lab rodents aren't good at seeing at all. And so we were kind of talking about the animal models. Ground squirrels can see much better. And so they represent, if you're trying to recreate a disease model condition in an animal, you don't want to use lab mice or lab rats. You'd want to use something that sees more like us. And ground squirrels fit that quite nicely. And they also happen to hibernate every 6 months out of every year. And so she developed a lot of collaborations, and it turned into this research resource where she's sharing ground squirrels throughout the country and sometimes world, and within the state certainly, to expand individual research programs and questions throughout a lot of areas of biomedical science.
Very cool. That's awesome. Is there like a specific part of the things that the squirrels can do within their biology that we're hoping to apply to human health and healing and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I mentioned they hibernate 6 months out of the year. Within that process, I was kind of showing you the cold room, and where they'll just live in these hibernation pods for 6 months out of the year and not eat or drink or go to the bathroom. And they'll come in and out of this hibernation state, which is going from 300 beats per minute in a normal active awake animal to 3 beats per minute in this hibernating condition. And they'll come in and out of this state every 2 weeks or so.
Sure.
And that transition is, you would think, very stressful on a condition, on an entire system. But they avoid consequences of like reperfusion of blood through all the organ systems and throughout the entire body. If you study certain senses or cell types within the hibernation state in particular, these cells kind of fall apart and stay dormant, but are able to come back on and regain function very quickly after hibernation. And so there are a ton of different adaptations within that hibernation cycle that we can study. So we focus primarily on obesity currently, and heart disease, but there are lots of other interesting avenues to pursue as well.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious around if there's any role that, you're obviously here at UW-Oshkosh, which is really, really cool. And obviously you went to school here. So there's obviously these ties. What is there like, do you feel like there's a good support system here at the university or just within Oshkosh in general in regards to the type of work you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been a natural fit because this is where the ground squirrel colony has been for so long. But in addition to that, sort of a startup kind of moving into campus, I think was a little new for them, but they've been very generous in terms of working with us, using other universities of Wisconsin models for how to create these academic industry and startup partnerships. And yeah, they've been a really nice collaborating partner with the sort of mutual agreements that we've been able to create, where we get a little space to do some science, grow our data sets related to the ground squirrels, and then we kind of support them, and then that sort of funding goes to educational goals that they're interested in.
That's awesome. I'm curious around the tech side.
Yeah.
So you brought me into the lab, and one of the things you talked about was sending one of the squirrels into outer space, or many of them, I should say, which I was like, okay, this is getting really cool. I'm just curious around like some of the technology you're using, maybe start with some of the hardware that you're going to be using to understand these squirrels. And then maybe too, like software. I know you talked about some of the machine learning tools that you have. And maybe just kind of talk about, if you're able to talk about the outer space stuff, that'd be super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of led by my scientific colleague here who works in Oshkosh as well, Dr. Ryan Springer. He wrote a couple of grants to NASA, some phase one, it's NIAC, I forget the acronym, but it's a biomedical research program that they have. And phase one being, develop a prototype, see if, this idea can actually work and can integrate into ideally current systems that they have.
Sure.
On things like the International Space Station. And so he's developed this nice pod that can record biometric data from the animal. So heart rate, respiratory rate, temperature, certainly. But the idea is you send these hibernating animals up to space to see if they can avoid some of the consequences of space. So radiation is very harmful, but also astronauts are known to sort of lose bone density and muscle mass rather quickly in zero gravity conditions. And they seem to avoid all of that in their hibernation cycle when they're not eating or drinking or sort of behaving as a normal mammal would. So we want to see if that also applies in zero gravity conditions.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. And then, so the other tech that we sort of use at Fauna Bio certainly is our drug discovery platform.
Yes.
So once we are interested in a disease indication, we look for adaptations against that disease. And then we use a platform called Convergence. And so our CTO, Linda Goodman, has a large computational team that develops these different platforms that aid in certain parts of drug discovery, from comparing human data sets to not only ground squirrel internal data, but all of the other hundreds of mammals that have had their genomes sequenced, and a bunch of other tools as well. So that's the sort of platform drug discovery side.
Yeah. Like the way the interview that I saw with her, the way it was described was like this tool, they're able to find the needle in the haystack faster, basically.
Yeah.
But the data that you guys are collecting also like makes the magnet bigger. Okay. Yeah. Now that we're gathering the things we really, really want, we're getting hyper focused, smaller data sets, and then the acceleration's faster with ML, machine learning and stuff, which is really cool.
We like to say we like to use nature to help guide us and sort of solve the questions for us, rather than running these sort of massive multi-million-dollar screens of sort of cell lines or animal studies or what have you. We just sort of focus on the specific disease question, find the animal that's good at avoiding that. And then from there, we have a really focused lens for, learning about the genes that are involved in that adaptation.
Today's episode is brought to you by Headway, a digital product agency based in Wisconsin. Do you need to design and build a world-class user experience for your software, but feeling like you just can't get there on your own? That's where Headway comes in. We're the folks who help ambitious startups and enterprise teams bring their product ideas to life through design, development, and product strategy. We don't just give you user interface designs and leave you to figure out the rest. We work with you and your target customers to create beautiful user experiences, build scalable design systems, and provide Silicon Valley level talent to get it done right the first time. Whether you're launching a new software or just looking to add features, we've got your back. We've worked with startups in industries like logistics, healthcare, fintech, and edtech, helping them solve their biggest software challenges. And here's the thing, no matter how complex your product is, we can help you gain clarity and get the job done together. We're so confident that we'll be the right fit that we offer a 50% money back guarantee if you don't think we're working out within the first 45 days. Ready to see how we can help you and your team? Just head over to headway.io and book a free consultation today. Have you ever had a moment in the lab yet where you're like, this is like crazy. Like this thing could change, people's lives, like things like that, change like different parts of society. Have you had those moments? And I guess, what does that feel like to you?
Yes, certainly. So a couple come to mind. So with our obesity project in particular, we're working with Eli Lilly. And so we'll get a lot of these targets. Like if we suppress this target, it potentially reduces obesity. And we find that in our platform. And some of these targets are already known to reduce obesity. And so it's not novel. And so we move on to something else. But to me, that really validates the approach. Like we're able to not only find things that have already worked, but it really builds our confidence for the novel targets that are sort of giving us a similar signal and that no one's working on.
Yeah.
So that's been really cool and gives, like I said, a lot of confidence in moving into those programs with novel targets. And then the other one that came to mind was something like the Spiny mouse. We were kind of talking about Spiny mice and their sort of regenerative capabilities. Super remarkable, very unique among mammals for sure. But like I mentioned, we're not very different, like genetically speaking, from these animals. So it's not a matter of like us not being able to do that thing. It's being able to find how they've evolved to do that and being able to find similar shared sort of genetic mechanisms to find how we might apply that approach to ourselves. Things like inflammation reduction for avoiding scarring, like these spiny mice are so good.
Yeah, the interview that you had listened to, it was from a couple years ago on YouTube. It was like the woman you were talking to about this spiny mouse research is like the idea like you could create a compound basically that could be applied to band-aids or things like that for regeneration. So like if we're reducing scar tissue from surgery or just different things over the years that people experience throughout their life for different reasons. Or she even said like pacemakers being installed and like it being rejected by the body, like making that less likely. There's just so many applications. Like it's really, really cool. So
we have a cool project. We don't have to talk about spiny mice forever, but we could. We have a cool project where we did these implants in the cortex. And so a lot of these neural implants, you get this encapsulation problem, which is just basically cellular scarring around that site. And it reduces signal and affects, the data that they're trying to collect or the therapeutic that they're trying to apply. Yeah. And so we don't see that in the spiny mice. They don't have that same inflammatory response and scarring. And I think it's just like a couple steps away of figuring out, well, how are they reducing the inflammation response to these things?
Yeah, it's all like, it's crazy cool stuff. It's just it's all fun to just think through.
Yeah, for sure.
I kind of want to go over to you being in Wisconsin's role in science and like biotech and biology and all that stuff. Because obviously with Madison, University of Madison, UW-Oshkosh, what do you think like makes Wisconsin a really like underrated place or a strong place, I should say, for scaling science-based startups like the one that you're working on? They're not based in Wisconsin, but obviously there's efforts here. So what are your thoughts on like, making that more of it? Obviously with the BioForward program in Madison and they're expanding to Milwaukee, but maybe as a statewide effort, like how do you feel like it could kind of keep moving forward and be more fruitful?
Yeah, so I'm very much like a biologist, and in the biomedical space alone, there's like between the institutions, the big ones certainly, but even the other smaller universities of Wisconsin, institutions like this one, there's really no science questions that we can't answer. There are labs that are specializing in the latest technology and stem cells and regenerative medicine and in all these areas. So it can be done here. It's just a matter of sort of community building and teaching people that it's possible. For us in particular, I think one of the hesitations was talent recruitment. And in my experience, that has not been a problem at all. Like we get maybe a tenth of the applicants that the Fauna HQ out in California might get for the same position. But within that, you get a lot of really hardworking Midwesterners that are interested in science and are super trainable and have been great in the lab. And they want to get involved in research, and they don't want to move across the country to one of the coasts to do research. And so hopefully it's just a matter of creating it more often. And this community building efforts like the ones you're involved in, I think are critical to sort of building the community and growing this even further.
Yeah. And again, we're just like, one part of the puzzle. Like we're not here to solve everything, but it's like we can definitely amplify what's happening, tell the story better, like change the narrative around like, hey, like there's actually like a ton of talent here that wants to stay here, live here, work here. And you're a prime example of that. Like, hey, you can like build part of your startup here or grow part of your startup here through the talent that's here and the network that's here.
Yeah. I think it's all possible.
Yeah. Very cool. So where do you think like maybe there's opportunities for the Wisconsin like science community or the biotech community to grow? Or I guess like, do you feel like, if there were more opportunities for people to get together, is it just awareness around the opportunities that folks in the field that live here don't realize are here? Right. Because I think about what you're doing is like, wow, like how did like the startup out of California all of a sudden is like investing here in you, in the space and like everything. So I'm curious like what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think, I think it is an awareness issue. So, I mean, certainly there's really cool research going on at UW-GB and Lawrence and these other places in the Fox Valley. And I'm not super aware of those projects, but there's probably potential for spin-outs and startups. And it's a lack of knowledge of tools and just being able to do it. In my case, it helped the ground squirrel colony be here, but and the animals are native to this area, and so we can sort of develop an outbred population and get a genetically diverse population to study. But we can, I forget where I was going with that.
Oh, that's all good. Yeah.
But I mean, why not Oshkosh, right? Like, is part of the point. Like,
I'd imagine like the cost of the cost of like the lab being here. Yeah. Obviously, there's difference of salaries, obviously in different cities and different geographic areas. But like, it is interesting that like I'm curious, like you were saying like, there's great research happening at Lawrence and WGB. Mm-hmm. What do you know about? I'm like, I don't know what's going on there. Like, could you tell me what you do know? And so it makes me think about like the narrative and the stories that we're not sharing, and they're kind of staying in like the science bubble. Or like maybe even within those localized communities, like how do we really like amplify like the things that are happening? So I guess maybe just talk about like what you do know is happening. I'm just curious, like,
So to your point, I don't know much. I think we're pretty siloed in our universities, especially the smaller ones that are focused on teaching. Like that's kind of the priority, and rightfully so. But I mean, there's these community building efforts that are happening and should continue to happen. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to start this Fox Valley Science Society where we do these talks every month or so at this science-based book club up in Appleton.
That's awesome.
And so recruiting speakers. So ask me in 6 months and I'll be able to tell you a bunch of really cool.
And let me know if you need help with that. Like feedback on like how to get it going and just anything around it. Like happy to help. There
was someone who was doing some NASA related work at Lawrence and I just like had no idea. Yeah. So I think it is a lot of these, I mean, these events, these sort of networking events and community building efforts are underrated and so powerful.
Yeah. I'm just thinking out loud right now, like, so we have Startup Week coming up in November. Mm-hmm. Would love to, because that's basically 6 months from now. Yeah. Not to say that you'll be ready for everything, but I would love to like, hey, for November, could we get a handful of folks to just share like, kind of quick storytelling and pitching of like, here's the things we're doing at the universities here in the Fox Valley. Yeah. Like, you might not know this, but it's happening right here. Yeah. Like, wow, like the NASA thing. And it's like, that's so cool. Like, so I think there's an opportunity for us to showcase what you guys are doing, put a spotlight on it and celebrate it. Like, I think that doesn't happen enough. And I think just also the opportunity for like what you're doing, want to do for a really like fun way to get people together and network and just talk and catch up and talk shop and, BS about whatever. Yeah. It's like, cause you need that in your life. Right. Cause when you go home and like your family or your spouse might not understand everything you're dealing with. And sometimes it's just nice to talk to someone that understands what you're dealing with. Exactly.
And it takes a bit of effort to create these things, as you well know. But once they're created, I feel like the demand is there too. Yeah. Like, the sort of announcement of the science club and all that stuff is really gathering a lot of attention on social media. And I think we'll draw a pretty nice crowd. And these are just casual science discussions and stuff like that. But it's based on a model of underground science society down in Milwaukee that's very successful and been running for like 8 years.
I didn't even know it was a thing. Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool. Yeah. And you get a lot of great feedback and ideas from like, and good practice for like being able to communicate your science to the general public, but then also they have fascinating questions from the outside perspective of, have you like thought about this part of hibernation? And so I'm just really looking forward to that part of it as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I think we can wrap things up. I'm just curious where people can learn more about Fauna Bio, and then if they have questions for you around Fauna Bio, your career path, or just anything that you're doing locally, like the science club. How can they learn more about Fauna Bio and then get connected with you?
Yeah, the website's a good spot, faunabio.com. My CEO does much more podcasts than I do, and so you can probably look up Ashley Zender for various podcasts there. Dr. Ryan Springer, the guy who's involved in the NASA work, was on Neil deGrasse Tyson's Star Talk last October, I think it was.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that's a really cool episode to get the sort of science behind those projects and what we're interested in there. And then, personally, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on your Startup Wisconsin Slack.
Nice.
And email.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Great to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on the Startup Wisconsin podcast. Want to support the show? Don't forget to subscribe and get updates. If you're feeling generous, you can share, rate, and review our podcast to help others find us. All right, folks. Until next time, let's keep moving Wisconsin forward.